starts to get into the holiday season where we're not so much only worried about Thanksgiving, but it's the Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's type time where people start putting up fancy decorations, whether it's Christmas tree and tinsel and ornaments or other types of New Year's streamers. That I think cats are actually more likely to be harmed by that as compared to dogs, because cats love anything shiny and moving, and they love to chase them and eat them. And what I worry about, number one, are ornaments. Some of them are glass ornaments. Some of them are smaller ornaments. Some of people even put food type ornaments on the tree, which can be smelly and enticing for them to eat. Specifically related to your glass and other ornaments, make sure they are at a height where the pets cannot reach them, because unfortunately I've seen cases where they are ingested. And while it makes a pretty cool x-ray to see an ornament in the belly, it's not so cool for the pet owner if surgery is needed. So it's important to make sure they are at a height that cats cannot get into. Specifically regarding tinsel, the difference between tinsel being eaten by a cat, for example, and let's just say a rock. Well, I don't know why a cat would eat a rock, but the point being that a rock is a single solid object. So if a single solid object is stuck within the intestines, it does need surgery. But what we worry about more, if you think about tinsel being string or rope-like, the problem is that that is a much different type of foreign object than a rock or something more solid, because the way food moves from your stomach down to where you poop it out is it moves by what's called peristalsis. So it's not like one piece of intestine takes that piece of food all the way through the intestinal tract and out the rear end. The intestines kind of move back and forth, pushing it along. And if you have a string that is sitting and stuck within the stomach or the intestines, and the intestinal loop is going back and forth over that string which can't move, it acts like a tiny little saw or a jiggly wire. And what we worry about as veterinarians is it can saw right through the intestines and cause a leak. So a linear or string-like or tinsel-like foreign body can be even more life-threatening and concerning as compared to a solid structure, whether it's a tennis ball and a dog and a golden retriever or a sock. That string or string-like object, the tinsel, the yarn, things like that can actually be even more concerning. So another good reason to make sure any ornaments, any tinsel, any decoration is well out of the reach of cats and dogs so they can't knock it over and get into it. And speaking of knocking over, it's another plug. If you do have ornaments, decorations, or your Christmas tree, it's to make sure that it is somehow tethered or sturdy, because pets have a habit of knocking it right over. So things that may have been out of their reach height-wise may now directly be on the floor as they knock over that tree. So make sure any decorations we have, tree included, are well secured so they can't be knocked over.
Yeah, that's great advice. And what about the actual lights of the tree itself? There's some instances of the dogs or cats actually chewing the wire.
Excellent point. So just like any other decoration or ornament, make sure any lights are well out of the reach, because cats, even more than dogs, it's a light. The light strand is string or string-like. It's shiny. It may or may not be moving, and they will bite right into it. And we have cases, unfortunately, that have a life-threatening electrocution, and they pass away from that. But the other thing that we can actually see when dogs or cats chew on an electrical wire of any kind is not only oral cavity problems. And what I mean by that is they get local electrocution burns on the side of their mouth, so it's called the commissure of their lips, or on their tongue. I usually tell people that if you're worried that some type of burn in the mouth, if it's on the tip of their tongue, usually that's because they've licked something that's caustic or toxic or burning, because dogs and cats don't really bite with their incisors. They more bite with the sides of their mouth. So if there's an ulcer or a burn on the front of their lips or the tip of their tongue, usually they licked something they shouldn't. With that said, when they bite something they shouldn't, like an electrical cord, more often than not, the burns are on the commissures, so the lip, the closure of their lips on the side, or the sides of their tongue. So if they chew an electrical cord, you can have burns on the side of the mouth and the tongue, which can be severe enough that they stop eating or have infections. The other thing that we can see when they chew an electrical cord is what's called neurogenic or non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema. And in very plain English, what that means, pulmonary edema means fluid in the lungs, fluid in the air sacs of the lungs. And neurogenic or non-cardiogenic means it's not heart related. So as compared to a heart failure dog or cat that will get fluid in their lungs, when they chew on the electrical cord, there's a massive shift in pressures of fluids within their blood pressures and their lungs, which ends up resulting within fluid inside their lungs, inside their air sacs. So you can have a dog or cat that chews on an electrical cord and within seconds to minutes to hours is in pretty bad breathing distress, respiratory distress, because rather than allowing air to get into their lungs, there's all that fluid in there which does not allow oxygen to be breathed in appropriately. So it's often a good telltale sign if they have burns on their side of their mouth, their lips, or their side of their tongue, and breathing distress, they probably chewed on something like an electrical cord, and look for that in your house. So point being, make sure any electrical cord is well taped, secured, or out of the reach of both cats and dogs, because around the holiday time, it's inevitable that we're going to see cases of burns from chewing electrical cords.
Wow. And you talked about during one of the breaks, you talked about the sprays or something we do on the trees themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So especially those trees, a lot of people love the smell and the experience of having a fresh or recently live tree to decorate in the house. But in order to keep them fresh and looking and smelling good, there are lots of different liquids and chemicals that are placed around the base of the tree to keep it as healthy as possible for as long as possible. What I would make sure is that any chemical you use to keep that tree healthy is pet safe and pet friendly, because that is, in their eyes, a bowl of water. They go under the tree, it's warm, it's shaded, it's hidden, it's a cat's most favorite place. They're hiding under there, and they just look at that as a bowl of water when they're thirsty. Why am I going to walk down the hallway or to another room where my litter box, my food and water are if I'm sitting next to a beautiful bowl of water? So just make sure any chemical or liquid that you put on there to keep or in there to keep that tree as healthy as possible is pet safe and pet friendly, because inevitably they're going to find it and they're going to lick it. We don't want them to have either oral, again, tongue or lip ulcerations or infections, or even stomach or intestinal upset, or something worse like organ damage from licking and drinking something they shouldn't.
So it definitely sounds like from the electrical standpoint and from those liquid toxins that you usually come home to a pet that's ill, and you have to start investigating as to why. It's not, unless you happen to be there when they're doing it. But
I would agree. And sometimes what I worry about is cats are such good hiders that it's not always immediately known that they're sick, because the first thing they do as sort of a prey or prey animal species is they will hide. And any pet owner that's ever tried to get their cat in a carrier to come to the vet office agrees. What do they do when they're scared or they're sick? They hide. So it's not always immediately aware to the pet owners that something may have happened. Maybe the lights are off of the tree and they just, they can't figure out why, and maybe they plug it back in, but they're not quite aware that Fluffy is sick because she's been hiding and they just assumed she was sleepy or tired. So it's not always something where we come home to say, oh my God, something's wrong immediately, and maybe hours or even day or days past the event. We've had cases where the cat chewed the electrical cord, did not get breathing difficulty, but had a tongue burn. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 days later when mom or dad recognized that the bowl wasn't being emptied, they weren't eating food, did they recognize something was wrong. So not all cats or all dogs, for example, when they chew a cord, will get both mouth and lung problems. It may be one or the other, and it may be even a few days later till they realize Fluffy hasn't been eating for a couple of days. That's weird. They go to the vet office, and now there's a huge burn on the side of the mouth or on the inside of the tongue that we walk our way backwards and say, yeah, it must have been X, Y, or Z now that you mention it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I think the gist of it, and what we haven't really blatantly said throughout this whole interview, is that it's the holiday time. Everyone's busy. Everyone's distracted, and you're gonna miss things. So the sum of it is be preventative, be diligent, and definitely there's lots of resources. Reach out to your veterinarian, reach out to local 24-hour centers, and just ask for advice and ask for help.
One more comment, because I think this is really important. And you made a great comment earlier about being prepared with your veterinarian's phone number, the local ER's phone number. The other thing I would be prepared with is an understanding of your pet's personality and medications they may need, because we're getting into holiday time and approaching New Year's. And people don't recognize at times that for anxious pets, just having extra family members over can lead to anxiety. We all know around the holiday times it gets dark. What happens? Fireworks, especially on New Year's. Lots of noise, firecrackers, etc. So just recognize what your pet's triggers may be and be prepared and appropriate for that. Don't wait till the last moment to call your veterinarian to refill the anxiety medication prescription, etc. So just recognize what time of the year is coming up. Be prepared with phone numbers, be prepared with medications, be prepared with information for your guests about what is safe and what is not safe. And I think preparation here goes a long way to prevent illness and to keep you out of the ER.
No, that's great advice. Well, we're out of time, and as always, Garret, wealth. This guy is not only a wealth of information, he explains things at a level that anyone can understand. That's why I love having you on the show, Garret. So people can reach you, I think, 3 ways. Either if they want to see you as an emergency clinician, it's through VSECvet.com. If you're interested in the VETGIRL, maybe we'll spend the whole show talking about VETGIRL one day. VETGIRL's an educational podcast series for veterinarians. So it's VETGIRLOnTheRun.com. And you have drgarretpachtinger.com as well as your own personal site. Is that correct?
I think I have a personal website.
Well, now you do. Now people are going to search it. But as always,
I think it's just GarretPachtinger.com.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, feel free to reach out. Obviously our for VSEC, we're 24/7, 365. The best thing to do is if you ever have an emergency and Dr. T's office is not open, we have doctors and nurses that can answer questions 24 hours a day. As I said earlier, it's always better to ask first before doing something, whether it's to give an over-the-counter medication, to give another pet's medication, to induce vomiting when you don't know if that's appropriate. So if Dr. T's office is not open, please call our hospital where a doctor or nurse can answer your question 24 hours a day. Even if you're not a client of ours, we certainly are there because we're going to let you know whether or not you need to be seen immediately or whether it's safe to go back to see Dr. T the following day. But it's much safer to do that than to potentially give your pet some sort of treatment at home and that compound the situation.
Yeah, don't Google it. Just
No,
Google phone
please.
numbers. But like I said, have the phone numbers in your cell phone. Well, thanks so much, Garret. Thanks so much for being on the show. It's always
Thank
great.
you.
And remember, everyone, love your pet like they love you, unconditionally. Have a great day.